Hello, everybody. Welcome to my little tiny studio in Harlem. Um, I'm going to talk to you about how I approach orchestrating a piece of music. So, the movement you see before you is Solenio by Vittori Rieti. And Vittori Rieti actually does a really great job of showing like the color that he's intending for in this movement with just the piano. He's writing a very traditional but very well articulated piano reduction. We can just give it a listen just to hear it. Okay. So yeah, like on the whole it might just seem like a piano kind of just being struck, but there's a lot of detail in here. He's using register very well to kind of show the color changes. Um, what I usually like to do when I'm attacking something like this is I look for the clues. First, I look at the number of voices. So if we look here on the left hand, we have this kind of soloistic voice, kind of independent from everything. And then if you look on the right hand, we have two voices moving in harmony. And that's pretty consistent all the way until bar 9. On the last beat, we get this sforzando. And what changes there, we turn to a 6 voice chord. We have 4 notes up here and 2 notes in the left hand. So already the like weight and texture changes immediately from this 3 voice idea to a 6 voice one. Second thing I'm looking for is articulation. Right off the bat, we have these staccato notes. So what I'm thinking there is like, all right, so what instrumental color would match this kind of staccato sound, followed by we have some accents here. It's a sforte, another sforte right here. So he's kind of giving some clue of like some sort of attack or suddenness happening there. Then we have, I love this staccatissimo, sometimes called a dagger. Should be played as such. And then we have some slurred stuff with the accent there. And yeah, there's some slurs and the occasional tenuto, which I don't think anyone today knows what a tenuto actually means, and I don't either. So what else am I looking at? I'm looking at form. If you notice, bar 1 through 11 kind of looks identical to bar 12 through 22. The only big change here is we have this sudden fortissimo accent happening right there, and that's kind of reverberating the idea that was happening at bar 9. It's kind of happening in more places. We have a little scalar section that makes it slightly different, but the melodic shape is fairly similar. Another key difference, while this one is still kind of in the mid-alto range the first time, like this little, it happens again, but more on the treble side. Okay, so yeah, with all that information, I try to process what I can distill this into. So here's what I came up with, this full score version. Yeah, why don't we give it a listen first? Starting with the bass clarinet. Okay, so what did I do there? Well, for starters, I kept the piano pretty much as written. And the big reason I did that was because in this particular movement, this particular section, I wanted to treat the piano more like a percussive instrument. In this case, the hammers are striking the strings, and we're getting more of the attack of the piano while it kind of melds in with the other instrumentation. So, question, or like the first, the first kind of unique thing I do, I have the bass clarinet playing the first beat, followed along with a solo contrabass moment. Now, that one for first off adds weight, which is always a good idea for the first note of a piece, just to give people a little more confidence. Second of all, where are we coming from? If you look over here in the previous movement, everybody's playing and they're all descending down into this first beat. So if we listen to how that connects, what have I done? I've given a little bit of weight to the downbeat, which is always a good idea. We're adding attack, so to say. And then giving the contrabass its own little moment, I think is actually really special, because contrabass is a very unique solo sound. Not always an opportunity for it, but I do feel like this is just the right place. It's exposed, there's nothing else going around it, so this is exactly a good time for a contrabass solo. And then I have the violin and the viola doing the harmony up top, and they're basically following the right hand all the way till we get to this part. Now, technically an A sharp, the second violin could play that, but we wouldn't get the same color as opposed to a viola, so that was a choice. If you haven't noticed, I always like to think of accents, so like I give the percussion a little suspended cymbal hit. Now, obviously the playback I'm using isn't what I'm intending it to sound like. I actually imagine it more of just like a little brush, but that's okay. I try not to rely on playback too much. Then again, we also have another accent here. This is the accent with the slurs, and I add a little vibraphone roll onto it, just to highlight that execution, that opening up of envelope of sound. Then we do a little interplay here with violin 2 and 1 and viola and cello, just because it's a different figure from what we have before. And so what am I doing there? I'm highlighting this change that's happening. Also, we have this accent, this forte accent going on in the piano vocal score. And I changed the bass to pizz, because pizzicato has a little more of a thud, a little more of an attack versus an arco. And then like, I just love this little figure, this doop doop boop boop, like totally works on arco contrabass. Like that's just going to be a really cool dark sound. And then we have the big moment, the big measure 9, where we change the number of voices. And so what do? We have bass clarinet playing the octave, and then the 4-note chord is in the string quartet. So so all 6 voices are being used in tandem with the piano part. And then the percussion, I could have had the vibraphone play those chords, or what I did instead was I gave the bass drum a little which again, like opening up the envelope of sound, this like attack. That's all I'm trying to prepare for, or that's like my logic behind it. Then we have the same chords and they kind of die down again. Now, second time through, I pass the solo on to the cello. Same thing, but because we're up the octave now, makes sense. And I keep the bass clarinet, that little downbeat, still in there. And because I changed that color to mimic that change, I put pizzicato in the strings rather than arco. And then finally, the big accent that is kind of coming off of this, I add the snare drum, which I think is just like a really cool just, it's exciting. I think it's given the nature of this like sudden fortissimo, a snare drum seems like the right move. So why don't we just play in here really quick. Okay. If you also noticed, even though in the piano vocal, that low C is just there in the bass register rather than the octave below it. Even though it's just right there, I add the contrabass the octave lower just to give it some weight. So that was just like an artistic choice. Even though Rieti didn't give me that information to do so, it felt right just because we're kind of getting into the piece now, and so like we want that support, whereas before was more of a soloistic section. We're continuing on with the idea and getting things moving along. Then it's just basically the same idea. Like the voices that I have here in the piano are just being fleshed out in the string quartet. And again, like this attack moment with the vibraphone from the previous section, like it's all pretty copy and paste, so to say. Now, like I could have done a different approach, but this is just what I went with. Okay, I did prepare this little thing here just to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about in terms of attack. Putting the envelope together. So this, I got this from Ableton. They do a whole series on like how to kind of deconstruct how audio synthesis works. But it's the principles here are essentially the same thing. You have what's called ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. Attack is the initial strike of something, whether it's a slow attack or a fast attack. Then the decay from that attack. Then the sustain is the actual pitch or whatever sound that just sustains for however long. And then there's a release, a little tail at the end of like when a sound finishes. Now, in this instance, if I press the note here, yeah, I hope that kind of clears what attack ADSR actually means. So like you see, watch the attack house. It takes 229 milliseconds to come up. Now what if I made it 3.88 seconds? Yeah, I didn't even hold it that long, but you get the concept. So that's a slow attack. Now, attack can mean the same thing with like snare drum or pizzicato string. That's what I'm doing essentially in the Selenio movement. When that when that drum set is coming in, when that snare drum's coming in, it is the attack. It's opening up the envelope of sound. So a snare drum might be something shorter like this. Yeah. And then decay, it's like after that initial attack, it's just like a subtle thing. But sustain can go. Oy. I love that. Sustain can go forever, as long as I'm holding it. So one idea of that might be like a pizzicato string with another string playing arco. So you have the attack and then the sustain that lasts forever. And then when you stop, there's always that little bit of tail. A good similarity to that is like, say, a cymbal. Like if I strike a cymbal, if I just hit a cymbal and then leave it, it's going to like resonate and have like a little tail at the end. Versus if I have two cymbals and I crash them together and then put them both on my chest to choke the sound, that's going to be an immediate release, and that tail is going to have a different sound to it. It's going to be like a psh, compared to just striking it and letting it ring, like a psh. But yeah, this is basically kind of always in my mind when I'm orchestrating. I think it's actually a pretty good depiction of like the whole concept. Yeah, I hope you learned something from that.